guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Renaissance Room podcast. So I want to talk about the myth of meritocracy. I found a really cool article today on Psychology Today. I got a little background music playing, so let me just turn this down. All right. I'm going to settle on into the day. No, I'm kidding. But I thought this was very interesting. I could be like a radio host, you know what I mean? Well, it's kind of what podcasting is in a sense, right? So the myth of meritocracy. Now, this is very interesting because a few years ago, I was reading Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 Hours, right? I'm sorry, it was The Outliers. And he talked about 10,000 hours, right? We hear people say that. We hear some of our most prominent Black athletes and people say, like, you just put the work in, right? And what's so funny to me is that I do think to an extent, because the conversation is always centering around Blackness and deprivation and oppression, we don't realize that there are some Black people who do have privilege. Now, I think that this more so shows up when we see Black kids who feel like they're not enough. Or there was this TikTok that went around. There was this Black guy who, just talking about how he was very privileged, how his parents were wealthy. He wasn't poor. And he just was basically saying, like, we have to normalize that not every Black person is poor and deprived, which is true. So we see it mostly in that sense, but we don't realize when it comes to success how there are many moving factors, right? And there are a lot of factors that are very seldom considered. And so what I started to think about was I was thinking about athletes and being a writer and just peering into different things, right? Sometimes I just let, if it's like a very prominent story like the Damar Hamlin, I'll just find myself peering into things and just, doing a little bit of research, and I'll share my opinions. So I was thinking about athletes, and I was thinking about how athletes have a lot of support in their plight to success, right? Whether it be the coaches, whether it be their parents, their mothers. There are just a lot of people who are training athletes consistently and who are supporting athletes and ensuring that they're getting these really good opportunities, right? There's a lot of positioning that really takes place for a person to be able to go to the NFL and be successful. It's not entirely hard work. There are some sacrifices, obviously, that are made, but a lot of it is positioning, right? It's being at the right place at the right time. It's being around the right people, being at the right schools, having the right connections, and also having the right support. Now, I remember there was a guy from my high school who actually had an opportunity to go play. I think it was at college, right? This was high school. I don't think he was getting drafted right out of high school, but I'm not exactly sure. But unfortunately for him, he didn't have that support, right? So he was around a lot of the wrong people, and that opportunity pretty much slipped through the cracks of his fingers. And so when we think about the myth of meritocracy, I found this to be very timely, especially in the world in which we're living in today. Now, on my Instagram, I kind of briefly dissected Shark Tales, which is one of my favorite childhood movies. I love Shark Tales. Like, I just always loved, I don't know what it was. I think a bit of it was the animation, right? Like Disney films, Pixar films have like just the best animations, like Nemo and Monsters Inc. And, those are just my jam. Like, I just love those. And so I was watching Shark Tales and I was just thinking about how Oscar was just like, I want to be a somebody. And, I cannot think of her name. Oh my God, what was her name? Angie's like, well, what's wrong with being here with us? And he's like, I want to be at the top of the reef. I want to be somebody. And he realized that at the top of the reef was nothing more than superficiality, right? He found himself really doing a lot of hasty, crazy things just for the attainment of being at the top of the reef because it looked starry lighted. And reality is what we value about celebrities is not entirely their personalities. It's not really who they are as people. And it's not always their work, right? We value the fact that they are treated and seen in such a light that embodies like human decency, right? We value that their voices are heard. We value their influence, right? Because what it is that when you're and now what we're seeing is a lot of people are talking about average jobs and regular people, right? When you're in that space, right? When you're a regular person, quote unquote, in the name of most of these Instagram celebrities and so forth, right? Because I've not seen any real celebrity. Well, I'm not gonna say that because I'm sure they're out there. So we ain't gonna generalize. I'm not even gonna give them the benefit of the doubt because I know they're out there. But what we're valuing and what we're really coveting is the fact that these are people who get the privilege of being treated like a human being. These are people whose voices are heard. These are people who have influence and who have recognition, right? Being a person, let's say whatever job you work, it doesn't matter. You work a job, you take care of yourself, you pay your bills. You don't get the same glory as a celebrity. Now, that's not to say that you should, or that's not to say that you don't deserve human decency. But when we look back and we look at celebrityism, right? We look at celebrity culture, and I just told you guys all the factors that really play into a person's success. A lot of times it's just based on privilege, right? So that means that it doesn't mean that you're less talented or less brilliant or less smart or you've made poor choices. It's just that this person has seriously, from a scientific standpoint, from a realistic standpoint, has had far better opportunities than you. And you have to also look at the parents, and you can't necessarily look at your parents and go like, oh my God, my parents didn't do X, Y, and Z, though I think a lot of people are, especially Black people. And you guys have to realize, just from the historical standpoint where we are today, I always encourage people to know your parents' age and look into what was happening within the Black culture and the Black community during those times, right? So in the 70s and the 60s and the 80s and so forth, that was the crack era, right? That was the opioid wave that really swept our streets. A lot of our great grandparents and so forth. That was what was going on then, right? And then you also kind of have like the rise of hip hop and rap culture, which is now more flashy. So at this point, it's tainting the love and the soul and the R&B that was once Black culture, right? Because that originated from the blues and so forth. So it's like, it's important to look back at your history and look at your parents and see what was going on during this time. I think too often, I say this all the time, too many people put so much pressure on themselves. I kind of feel as though the way my generation may look at celebrities in awe and just kind of have that sense of envy because they feel like they want to achieve this too, right? There's this false sense of close proximity on social media where you can look at your favorite athletes or you can look at your favorite entertainers or so forth or whatever celebrity, and you see that they eat avocado toast, right? I'm pretty sure I said that on this podcast like way back, could have been almost a few years ago. But I talked about how you can look at them and see, oh, they also like avocado toast. So then you think that there is this proximity between you and them when there is no proximity at all. And so now you have this attainment to aspire to be, right? Because we talk about the positioning and we talk about the 1%ers and the 2%ers and so forth, you'll start to see that sometimes they also desire relatability, right? Because when you have this kind of like track in life, you're not relatable, right? Let's just be honest. I mean, most people you're going to come into contact with are going to be the workers at the golf club, right? They're going to be the workers on the yacht, or you know what I mean? So you don't really have that sense of relatability to an extent, because most people just work regular jobs, right? Like most people are not famous. Most people do not have or did not have certain experiences and certain exposures. And I think because we are so quick to disregard and literally just be so degrading to people who have those type of careers, that's kind of what it then becomes. Like when I look at some of the people that y'all have put on a pedestal, and I'm saying this like in a very general sense, but I'm more so saying the people that Black people have propped up because of their business or whatever the case may be. And every time I look at these, whether it be men, it's both men and women, when I look at their Instagram captions, it's always like they're pretty much always crapping on y'all. Like, oh, you got to step it up, or I gave these girls a try, but they could. Like, why are we supporting them? Why are you giving them your hard-pressed dollars that you have to get up and go to work for every day at your regular job? But they're simultaneously saying they would not date a regular person, or they would not talk. Like, why are y'all supporting them? You see what I'm saying? Like, we have to really step back and realize that there are some things that we are in control of, and that's probably one of them. See, the thing about entrepreneurship is that it's very people-centered, and it's like, how is it that this is the predominant fact, that this is the predominant geographic and socioeconomic background of people who are supporting you, but it's like you're turning around and you're crapping on them every Instagram caption you get. And then, for that lack of relation, right, a lot of people will gravitate towards social media. So you have some people who don't have celebrity friends or whatever the case may be, or if we made them Instagram famous, right, they may not they don't have certain customs, certain mannerisms, you know what I mean? They don't really know the game like that, right? Because they're social media famous. They're not famous in real life, right? So they're not able to move in certain circles with people who are actually famous. So it's like, then they go to social media and you guys give them validation and all these different things. And so what you'll find is they will still keep you, right? They still want to have the conversations. They still want to engage, and they'll just tell you, oh, just work hard, all these different things, when there are several different factors that contribute to that thing. I've been thinking for myself about certain privileges I've had, but at the expense of those privileges, I had to let certain things go because the cost of it was too high, right? You may have an economic position, but now it's costing you your peace. And what good is it if you don't have peace? Because now if you're moving with such a unstable, if your mind is not stable, it's going to be really hard for you to make good decisions. So it's like, okay, at this point, I'm at a crossroads, and this is life, right? So the most unfortunate thing that I think happens too often is that now we've painted this idea of success, right? And this is definitely tying into the myth of meritocracy. But it's also this false belief that life doesn't happen, right? It's this false, like when I look at people who were in NFL, got hurt and couldn't be, and I guess I don't know what it is. Why am I using the NFL so like commonly when I don't really know too much about it? It's so funny. I don't know why that's just like my most thing. And maybe because it's the draft right now. Okay, hold up. Y'all see that imposter syndrome keeping in? I know a little something, right? So anyway, you have that as a factor. And so it's like, you look up and you just kind of realize like there is, I kind of lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. But basically what I'm just saying is that there are a lot of factors. Okay. And so many of those factors are out of our control. So when I think about the myth of meritocracy, I want to read this to you guys. So it says, nothing is more appealing to the American mind than the idea that if you work hard enough, success is within reach. Although this myth has been debunked, people still want to believe that through sheer effort and ingenuity, anyone can overcome adversity and live the American dream. The reason meritocracy is problematic is that it assumes the motivation relies solely on the willpower of the individual and ignores the fact that not all of us have been taught or trained to exercise willpower, nor do we have the cultural resources to do so. Effort, motivation, grit, and perseverance are cultivated, not turned on and off like a light switch. Motivation is always interacting with opportunities. You can invest great dedication, but if you don't have enough resources, or if your school is underfunded, or if your parents are unable to enrich your education through extracurricular activities, motivation alone will only take you so far. So I thought about the commonality, right? So when we talk about underfunded, right, what are we really talking about here, right? We're talking about majority of Black people who are online, right, and who are coveting or more so envying the lives of people who are, and I keep saying crapping on them, and I'm not saying this to be like funny. I'm just saying this to let you guys know, like, really look at the character of this person. Do they even have the humility? Like, are they even appreciative of the fact that you guys are supporting their business? You know what I mean? Like, are they even appreciative of the fact that you guys are putting them up on this pedestal when they're really nobody? Like, they're really just Instagram famous, right? They're not a celebrity. You know what I mean? It's just that they've garnered certain success by X, Y, and Z. And I talked about this in the last episode, just how it's so important to have humility because first of all, God give and then God take it away. And I think too often, because we live in this culture of like now, people don't realize that there were once people who also had successful businesses and they are not thriving anymore. And that's not to say walk around on eggshells and be fearful and be quote unquote negative. This is just like, and then when I say negative, it's just so funny because it's like I find myself having to explain and over explain the realisms of life. Like my purpose, and I was talking about the NFL, right, was, it's back to me now. It's coming back to me. I was talking about how, you know, you see guys who wanted to go to the NFL, they didn't make it to the NFL, and then they go off and do something else with their lives. And that is life. right? And I think what we're doing now is we're just teaching so many people that if you work for it, you're going to get it. And you don't realize that like life happens. I was so devastated when I didn't get to go to New York, from the age of like 19 to like 23, it was my dream. I really wanted to get there. But I looked up and I realized as I got older and I was making all these choices in my life, and I just kind of realized that like, it's not on me. Right. And so when I recently visited New York, not only did I realize I would never in a million years want to live there, and I don't even see how other people live there. But I realized that so much of my desire to get there had nothing to do with my sole motivation, right? Like it was more so like I did not have the resources to get there. Okay, period. Like I was not in school. I didn't have any scholarships. I didn't come from a rich family. I didn't have any connections. I did not have any money, right? Like there was no way I was going to New York. And I think so often people just think that like, if you just believe, it's going to happen for you. Another factor to really take into consideration is the interdependence that is required for true success or any type of result. When I look at some of my favorite business owners, they're never the type of people who talk about being self-made, right? People who talk about being self-made is so hurtful. And I talked about this. I don't even know where I don't know if it was a column. I don't know if it was a podcast. Oh, but I wish I could point you guys to that direction, but I'm gonna just go ahead and read. I'm gonna just repeat it here. People who talk about being self-made are liars. And I know because I've seen it in my own lives. And this is more common than I feel like in men, but I feel like a lot of women are kind of taking on that dogmatic approach too, because they think it's flattering, right? And I think there's really something said about the culture of narcissism that really centers in on entrepreneurship, especially today with social media validation. But this idea of like, oh, I'm just so self-made is a lie. It is the biggest lie you have ever heard. When I tell you the people who say that they have to do everything by themselves, they are lying to you. They are lying in your face, and they are selling you an idea and a something that is just marketable, right? You guys ever been to those like real estate events, type of extravaganzas type of things where you go in and they'll just tell you like, if you just sign up for this course, it's going to be, but they're lying to you, right? Because you sign up, you pay the $250, then they're going to sell you another $1,300 because it's like you have to just spend money because they're scamming you, right? And then you look up and then you have absolutely nothing, but you've invested 20 grand because what they're telling you is a lie. So it's like, it's endless, right? And I just thought about that. That just blows my mind. So there's nobody who's self-made, literally. People who have any, like even for myself, I am always quick to contribute so many of the people who have supported and have spoken life into me and who have given me inspiration and who have guided me in my adolescent years, right? Like nobody is self-made. Okay. So just get that out of your heads. So another thing that this article really talked about was just the excess of independence, right? A lot of people have taken this into extremes, which I would completely agree, right? We have become so overly self-sufficient that like just the idea of wanting to depend on someone is just one of those things where it's like, it feels so burdensome. We are looked at as if we were weak. I will never forget having a breakdown moment, and I was crying to someone that I really confided in, and they were like, you are so weak-minded. I was so crushed and so taken back. Now I forgive this person because honestly, I just don't think they knew better. But like, it just amazes me to just kind of see how we've kind of morphed into that as a culture, as a group of people, to where it's like expressing any vulnerability or any realism is seen as a weakness. It's seen as like, oh my God, like this person is just, you know what I mean? And I just feel sorry for so many people who are alone and struggling with that. I had to really pray for God to bring me community. I had to really pray for God to put the right people into my life, because it just was one of those things where it's like I was really, really struggling. I realized that I had gone, you can only go so far with just you. You know what I mean? Someone said, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others. And that's actually, now that I say that, that's not really what I was getting at, but overall, it's a true thing. Really trying to do things by yourself and like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, you're only going to get so far. So my message and my sense of encouragement and my solution for this would be, take the time to kind of step back and observe observe some of the things you've been told. Observe some of the people who get online and tell you certain messages that are just not true. It sounds good though, right? It sounds good. Oh, you're self-made, right? Because they know you don't have anybody, right? But they know the reality is that they've got 7 people backing them down. They've had people who've been in their corner for a very long time, and they will never give these people acknowledgement. And that just kind of goes to show the character of a person. And this is why you can't envy people who are successful, or you can't envy celebrities, because not every person is a role model who has influence, right? So I want to end with this. It says, an inflated sense of self-worth, fame, and the belief that we are all self-made are appealing in the short term, but detrimental in the long term. They provide an immediate kick, an adrenaline rush. However, in the long haul, they can create divisions, arrogance, isolation, harmful psychological toxins. Humility, fairness, and interdependence are much better investments in well-being. When we traffic in meritocracy, celebrityism, and self-sufficiency, we often tell others that unless they attain higher degrees of education, success, popularity, or invulnerability, they are not as worthy as we are. Is this really what we want? So that's something to really think about. We are definitely in that space now, and I don't think people realize that that's dangerous. That's very dangerous. And to me, when I say, because I was on Medium, I was writing, it's my column, and I just seen someone was just talking about this, like just how self-love has made us worse as people. And I would agree. When I say arrogance is at an all-time high right now, it's crazy to me. Like when I said this in the last episode, when I tell y'all I sat and listened to this lady just talk about regular men, and like, it's just like, you guys are delusional. Like, you're absolutely delusional. And that's why I was saying for myself, I feel like with the Kevin Samuels, it wasn't entirely black and white. He had a lot of gray. There was a whole lot to really unpack there. But if I'm looking at this from an objective point of view, not looking at his character, not really looking at the words and, all the hate that he kind of did spew. Well, I can't say kind of did. He totally did spew on that. Like, right, we're very much aware. But when I really sit and look at his messages and studying, like the motive behind all of it, it's this right here, right? It's this arrogance that is just so prevalent within women and men. And it's so unattractive, and not just in terms of relationships, just in terms of human beings. Like, the attitudes within so many people today is absolutely disgusting. Like, it's just it makes you not even want to deal. Like, and I can see why so many people are retreating, but this is dangerous, right? Isolation is dangerous. Loneliness is dangerous. It's not normal. So all in all, I'm not telling you don't strive for things, right? Me and my sister just had this really good conversation this morning, and we talked about pursuit and attainment and so forth. So no one is saying don't strive for anything, right? No one is saying don't try, right? I believe in even like, and this is good too, as we venture into the inequality, and it's becoming more prevalent and so forth, right? It's like, don't be in denial about racism, but don't let it stop you, right? Do the things you want to do, but really take the time. And I'm going to highly, highly encourage everyone to ask God, what is your will for my life? God is so good. I'll never forget. I listened to this pastor, and he said, if you ask God what your purpose is, he's going to reveal it to you within 6 months. Now, this is way before the prophetic reels and the 30-second clips about God's going to deliver $1 million by tomorrow morning at 4:30. This was way before that era. It was a full-length YouTube video. He just talked about how to find your purpose and so forth. And I'll never forget, I asked God, and he showed me. And I remember writing down, I wanted to inspire young girls. I wanted to be a good role model for young girls. And that's what I'm doing, right? Fast forward. So it's like, God is so good. He's so, so good. And so it's like, I just pray that you guys will get into that space, because you have to realize that the world may be changing, but the systems are not. And realizing that life is so much more than the attainment of things, right? People don't really care about your accomplishments. And it's not that people don't want to want you to have better than them, right? That's not always the mindset, but it's just more so one of those things where it's like, when we're rambling off about how we're doing this and how we're doing that, you have to realize that this is not something everyone else is doing, right? Like this. And I think too often the isolation can really put us in a space where we're haughty, where we're arrogant, and where we're really ignorant to culture, right? We're really ignorant to our reality. And we don't realize that we're really blessed, and we all have privileges in certain areas, but there are some people who really don't have any privilege, right? And so it's important to realize that, and it's the little things we take for granted. This is my reference back to the whole Shark Tale clip that movie I was watching, and just kind of dissecting that. Like, we don't realize that having good friends, right? Like Angie, who gave up her grandmother's pearl, you know what I mean? For Oscar's dream and desire. And I think she gave it to him so he can pay some money back and get out of trouble, right? Like, so we don't realize that, like, having a friend like Angie, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's always like, oh, we got to get more, we got to do more, cut those people off, you got to come up here, upward mobility, this is the way to go, cut off your friends, and you know what I mean? And we don't realize that. Now, of course, you guys know I am not here for hanging around negative influence, okay? Now, we all got to be trying to get right and do right, but it's just too often we don't realize that, and we don't realize our privilege, and we don't realize the ways in which we're blessed, and we don't realize just those very small, mundane things that we take for granted every day, like Oscar did with his friend Angie, And so we're going to talk about beauty, dissecting it, and really talking about the myths of beauty, because I do think there are some myths there. I think that too often being beautiful, right? I think, yeah, just honestly, I really do. I think that's good to talk about, because I think too often as women, if you're naturally pretty, right, you really easily fall into the negative stereotype. But unfortunately, that is actually a little bit more common, right? I think that women who do have natural beauty are unfortunately a little bit more vain and arrogant and unkind versus women who maybe didn't have that until they got a little bit older, or you know what I mean, like some type of humble beginning. And I know that sounds so silly, and it sounds a little controversial, and I hope it doesn't sound contradictory, but there is something in there that I think we need to talk about, because I know for myself, I fell victim to those really negative stereotypes, and I think that this is also hurting how we're seeing people in real life, right? Not every woman who wears a wig is like adopting the philosophies and psychological patterns of your rappers, right? Like, not every Black woman who has nails or acrylics is, you know what I mean? And I'm not going to say that there are not a lot of people who are taking this path, and it's really just because of popularity, identity crisis, and so forth. But there's a lot to unpack there. So we're going to talk about that in the next episode, and I hope you guys have a great day. It's been a while. I'm glad to be back, glad to be recording. This is going to be recorded prior, so happy Friday. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Peace.